Welcome to the show again, to the 15th episode of A Just Man Rises. I'm your host, creator, Tyrone Downs, and I'd like to thank you for joining me this week. All right, as you know, I got my 3 links in the description box below. The Bible app is so crucial that we read our Bibles and get closer to God and understand what the kingdom is talking about. The second link is for the shirts. As we know, shirts has got my red on today. Get your shirts, support in that fashion. And of course, like, subscribe, and share to this YouTube, as we all know. The third link is the book, When Enough is Enough. His Turn, When Enough is Enough. That's part 1. Part 2 is coming out soon, and be on the lookout for it real soon. All right, let's get into the word today. All right, so today we're going to talk about different versions of this story, this parable that Jesus told. So Jesus with his disciples and with the multitudes in different places. And he told many parables, and most of the parables always related or came back to the kingdom was like this, the kingdom was like that. And he thought many of the parables was him trying to give us what the kingdom of God is like, how we live in the kingdom. What is it like being a kingdom citizen? And so sometimes as commentators and preachers, sometimes we try to make a metaphor out of a metaphor. And so it's, in many cases, the parables are already metaphors that we need to relate to how we can do it in real life. So that's what Jesus did. And one of the things Jesus always talked about was money. I know this can hit people funny, or hit people might like it, people may hate it, people may like it, and different things. So, but Jesus talked about, the main thing he talked about money was how we managed it. And if I had a topic today in dealing with this parable, and this parable is called the shrewd servant in the King James Version. I'm going to be reading from the English Standard Version today, from my computer right here. And that is the English Standard Version. It takes the these and thous, but still keeps the still not really change the definitions at all, just change the words that are used. Instead of thou, you, different things like that. And just different word sets. So English Standard Version, what I'm using today. But the parable is the shrewd servant, dishonest servant, dishonest manager. Different versions have the same thing. It's the same thing. So as we look at how this is laid out, so this is what we're going to talk about today. But definitely, Jesus talked many times about what people use to live. He talked about farming, talked about growing things, talked about livestock, finding the sheep. All these parables are related to the economy of that time, which was money, livestock, and farming, and growing your own food and things like that. Growing your own food or selling food, farmers. That's what the economy was, all three. In our economy today, it is mainly money. Is that what people, everyday people, most of us, we give our services to make money. There are some farmers, but we still transact in money. We change those goods into dollars and cents. And so almost everything we do is transferred into dollars and cents nowadays. But Jesus really always dealt particularly with money, or the livestock, or the farms, or the vineyards, or whatever the currency in that time. And he literally dealt with money. And when he used it in a parable, we have to make sure that we're using it as money and not as something else. And so we got a different parable we'll talk about that. But this one in particular talks about money. And when we tell you something different, it's gonna look different to you when you hear it from that perspective, talking about kingdom and how we manage money. So let's talk about this parable. Let's talk about this chapter in Luke 16. If you're with me with the Bible, you just read it yesterday on the Bible app. If you were on with me on whatever day we're on right now, you just read it. But if you haven't read this story, I'm going to read a lot of it on this lesson today, just so we can make sure we got a clear picture, because I think this is one of the parables that we don't address completely, or we don't address in full. And I may have to do a second part, because I try to stay within the 20-minute time period on the study today, on the episodes. So As we go, here we go. So the parable of the dishonest manager from English Standard Version. And let us read Luke 16. We're going to go Luke 16 through 15, and let's get it. He also said to his disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his possessions. And he called him and said to him, what is this that I hear about you? Turn in your account of your management, for you can no longer be a manager. And the manager said to himself, what shall I do since my master is taking the management away from me? I am not strong enough to dig. I am ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do, so that when I am removed from my management, people may receive me into their homes. So summoning his master's debtors, one by one, he said to the first, how much do you owe? How much do you owe my master? He said, 100 measures of oil. He said, take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, and how much do you owe? He said, 100 measures of wheat. He said, take your bill and write 80. The master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness, for the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourself by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you in the eternal dwellings. One who is faithful with very little is also faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in much. If then you have not been faithful in this unrighteous wealth, who will entrust you with the true riches? And if you have not been faithful that which is of another's, who will give you which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. The Pharisees, who were lovers of money, heard all these things, and they ridiculed him and said to them, you are those who justify yourselves before men, but God knows your hearts, for what is exalted among men is an abomination in the sight of God. Here we go. I'll stop right there. So Luke 16, 1 through 15, we just read. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of things in here. So let's point out, let's get to some basics. So Jesus was talking to his disciples primarily, but the Pharisees and other people heard what he was talking about. So he gave the parable of a rich ruler who had a manager, and the manager was not doing what he was supposed to do. It doesn't say he was defrauding the people. It doesn't say though. It said that he was wasting his possessions. So I'm not sure what that could have looked like, and what in particular wasting his possessions, but the key is that he was wasting them. Whether he was wasting his ability to do his job, he wasn't doing it effectively enough, or he was not performing, not giving the money where it needs to go, or not doing, he just wasn't doing his job. So the man, reasoned with himself so he can understand, you know what, I'm not strong enough to go out here and dig ditches. Literally, I'm not strong enough to dig ditches, manual labor. And I'm too ashamed to beg, being in the position that he was. Like, it's going from being a high-ranking official and in charge of stuff to being begging on the street. Like, how are people gonna look at you? Like, really? That can be a very shameful place to be. And of course, in that culture, pride in you going from one level to going lower to a lower level, a much lower level, is more shameful than having a job having a lower paying job. So as we look at that, like, that's what he said. No, do this. I'm gonna do this. I gotta find a way that I can be accepted by people. And so what he did was he gave the two, as we talked about, discounts. One owed 100. He said write 50. One owed 100. He told him to write 80. So different, and they were, as I told you, they're products, measures of oil, wheat. That's what they owe, like borrowing times, and they would borrow land. They would borrow land to grow something, and then they would owe the owner of the land the portion of what they make, and so they were due in to give those things. And then the other portion they would sell, and then a small portion they would keep for themselves. That's how they made their living. So the oil, and it's most likely olive oil. When I went to Israel, I got to see the old olive oil presses where they would, put the olives in this big press, this big metal, not metal, but big stone press, and they would have oxen, grind it. So, and that's how they extracted the oil. So in one oil, one wheat, the same thing about the land. So same thing with the olive trees. Somebody owned that land, and they were in essence sharecroppers in some cases, and they still owe the owner a portion of what they produce. So as you see it, this is directly dealing with currency, funds, way of living. And he said, okay, y'all, this, bam. So he gave them a discount. And so what that most likely did, just like any credit card collection or a collection agency, they would try to make sure that they recoup some of their funds. If the goal is to recoup everything. If I lend out $100, I would like to get $100 back, or probably more. And so that may take longer for me to get all that money back, or I may not get it back. But if I literally bargain down and say, hey, if you got 50 right now, give me 50, we can take care of it. And that's essentially what he did. He's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to do this. Hey, write down. Go quickly. He said, quickly go write down. Go write down a lesser amount, and you take care of it. So now, instead of them not having those funds in, now he's able to receive funds. The company or the ruler that he worked for was able to receive funds. And then he's like, okay, you know what? You did a good job. He literally commended him. And he said, the master, in verse 8, the master commended the dishonest son for his shrewdness. For his shrewdness. And then you always look at what we have right here. He talked to him about his shrewdness. Hey, you did a good job, because we got some funds in. And so that's what you want to always look at, that he commended him. And so this is a hard parable to try and talk about, because he did something that was less but got commended. But it was more than what he was doing before, because he was wasting his possessions. Whether he was just sitting on his high horse, just relaxing, whatever the case may be, he wasn't managing what he had. He was literally wasting it. And so he said he commended him. And let's talk about what he said. He said, the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than sons of light. He's talking about how the believers, the sons of this world and the sons of the light, the only difference is one is a believer, one is not. And he's talked about how they are more shrewd in dealing in this system than we are, than the believers are. And he was like, hey, we need to take a look at what you need to do here. We need to we need to perform in a way that we need to deal in a way that's going to be beneficial to the kingdom. But sometimes we get off track. And I'm going to tell you this is what Miles Monroe hit me with the other day. And so if you don't know Miles Monroe, it's one of the pastors who passed away a few years ago. But he said something profound about the churches in our society. For example, when he started his church in the home, and it grew to something big. He called his place, it's for ambassadors. The Diplomat Center is what the church that he started was called. And they was like, he got picked at, or they was like ridiculing him. You don't have a steeple, you don't have pews, you don't have this, you don't have all the standard church things that you should have. But God gave him the vision that, hey, we are ambassador. This is the Diplomat Center. And that if Jesus didn't waste anything. Jesus didn't waste. He's like, pick up them 12 baskets. Hey, we can't take that with us. Pick up this. They had 12 baskets. And thing about it is I never knew why was the number 12 so important. But each disciple was able to carry a basket. That's 12 baskets. Like, just think about that. Jesus didn't waste the. Hey, if we got 12 baskets. That's all we can carry. That's how much we got, and that's what happened. But what he was saying is that what Dr. Miles Monroe was saying was they picked at him and ridiculed him, so you don't have these standard things that a church supposed to have. But then when his center became the number one event organization organizing, you can come here, have events. That means that the government of the Bahamas was paying him to use his facilities. And he was like, listen, he said, the average church only is in function about 2 days a week. And let's give them 3 days a week. So there's 3 days a week where your church is being used for your church functions. But then you got 4 other days that is not being used at all. Like it's just waste. And so if you look at it like that, like he's like, this is why, and this is what he said, this is why preachers, he said, if you want to become a pastor of a church, like you need to study business so that you can manage the resources that God has given us. And that is a thing, that is a twist on what we think we should be doing. I think the way that how we should be doing. And that's why this parable was just hit in a different way. That's why it's hardly teached. I've only heard a few people even talk about this parable. Miles Monroe being one of those. And this is one of the favorite ones I come to, because why isn't it taught just like any other parables or any other miracles that Jesus did? But it was trying to get us to look, this is what we managed. And then I want to, as we get ready to close here in a little bit, there's some couple verses I want to point out. And then definitely go back and read this and look at this and look at what God says. Read the whole breath, because this ESV Bible kind of broke it up a little bit. At 13, they said it's a new story, but it was continuation. So then let's talk about let's start with verse 10. Verse 10. Let's go with verse 10, 10 and the rest of it. Because these are some key verses that you probably have heard before. But if you put it in context with this scripture, it will make a whole lot more sense. So one who is faithful with very little is faithful in much. And one who is dishonest in very little is dishonest in much. He's just saying, like, whatever you have, you are like, money doesn't corrupt people. You're already corrupted. Just money just reveals it. And that's the other part. Money doesn't corrupt you. You already corrupt. And if you're faithful with little, faithful with much. And he said, if you have not been faithful with the unrighteous wealth, with this thing's not going to last, it's whatever. With unrighteous wealth, who will entrust you with true riches? Like, if you can't take care of this toy thing, then how can you take care of something that's really real and really valuable? And that's what he's saying. And it said, if you have been faithful with riches of another's, who's going to give you your own? Like, if you aren't taking care of the things that someone else has entrusted to you, how are you going to take care of your own stuff? Like, if you're having your job or where you're at, you have this ability to lead people, you have the ability to perform your gifts and serve your gifts to the public through that organization. If you can't do that through there, then how am I going to give you your own organization in order to lead people, or to serve your gift? And then he said, and this is a key one, verse 13, no servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one, love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. And this is the thing I'm going to leave y'all with this one. And we can talk about maybe more next time. But God didn't even say about Satan. This isn't even about Satan. Is that sometimes we are driven away by our own lust. And you can't serve God and money. He didn't even say God and Satan. He's like, God and money is only two. And that's what he addressed. God, you can't serve God. Both of them can't be one. You have to serve God, or you got to serve money. And that's the choice that we have to make. And this is the biggest choice that we have to do in our daily lives. Like, who is first? What do we bring our tithes to? Are we bringing tithes? We say, oh yeah, I guess we can do whatever we want with it. But you can't serve God and money. And that is the key that he wanted to finish it. You cannot serve God and money. And he wants us to manage the things. So if we serve God, then we manage things the way he wants us to manage them, or the way that he's given us our intellect to manage them in a proper way, that we're going to serve God and we're going to serve the purpose that he put us on this earth for. And that is all I got for you all today. Remember, read the scripture, get in the word, like, share, subscribe, and I will see you guys next week. Thank you.